of the Real Food Challenge. They'll give you some of the background of their organization, their model, and introduce the Real Food Calculator, a way to quantify change. And then 3 Real Food Challenge programs in the East, West, and Midwest will be presented by those in the trenches. 1 student, 1 food services director, and 1 Real Food Challenge alumna who continues her real food work after graduation. So now let me introduce our first 2 presenters, Tim and David. Tim Galarno is a past Roots of Change Fellow who works as an education and research program specialist in social issues for the Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems, focusing on farm-to-institution, community food systems, and student education and empowerment. He also serves as an advisor to campus farm-to-college efforts, as a board member for the California Student Sustainability Coalition, and advisory committee member on the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. In addition, Tim is a co-founder and serves on the National Coordinating Committee of the Real Food Challenge that's working to shift over $1 billion in annual food procurement and consumption in colleges and universities in the United States by 2020. You'll hear quite a bit about this. Most recently, Tim co-chairs the Central Coast School Food Alliance, which is working regionally across 3 counties to increase good food access for innovative school breakfast, lunch, and snack programs in over 25 school districts in California. David Schwartz is a current staff member of the Real Food Challenge, working primarily on training, student education, and campaign development. He began his food work in high school with the Food Project, where he filled a variety of roles from diversity trainer to urban agriculture intern, and also served 2 years on the Food Project's Board of Trustees. David graduated in 2009 from Brown University with a major in the history of food, agriculture, and environmentalism. At Brown, he founded a garden-based education program and worked with Brown Dining Services to craft a $1.3 million real food purchasing program. David has worked with the Real Food Challenge since its founding and has planned numerous regional summits and training. While at Brown, David was awarded a CV Star Fellowship for social entrepreneurship and Brown Student Leadership Citation for Innovative Thinking in 2008. He is also a 2010 Echoing Green Fellow with Aneem Steele. David and Tim, take it away.
Well, thank you, Jeff and Marty, for inviting us to participate in the Good Food Network calls. We hope we have some exciting information with some good energy and different lenses and perspectives on the issue of scaling up good or real food in higher education. So I know there's a slight pause as we progress through the slides, so I'll try not to jump ahead by 1 or 2. Jeff, you did a great job of just giving a brief overview. So again, for those that have just hopped on, we're hoping to give you a little background and context to how the Real Food Challenge emerged and where we are today, some of the key points of our model, some of the specific information about how we capture and quantify real food with a multivariate tool we call the Real Food Challenge Calculator, and then opening it up to hear from recent and former students and recent graduates, as well as the perspective of an innovative dining service director from UC Santa Barbara, who's done some great work with students and has been scaling up real food work on her campus and beyond. So without further ado, I'd like to start a little bit with knowing our history. We'll take that 1 foot back and then we'll look forward into the future. So what was happening in 2006 and 2007 across the country was a groundswell of student interest on sustainable food issues on their campuses. But these issues were often siloed. There were students working on fair trade on their campuses. Others were working for cage-free eggs and humane issues for the food system. Others were looking for organic or local issues to be more prevalent as options available for their food services. And there were organizations working and engaging and supporting students in those issues. In addition, there was a strong thrust on worker justice issues with the Coalition of Immokalee Worker and the Student Farm Worker Alliance. And what we realized at that time was that there was no set benchmarks for moving a vision of sustainable food forward, or real food forward, and that these great pillars in work that was exemplified weren't connected that well. And so myself and David Schwartz and Aneem Steele, Rowan Dunlap from the Food Project as well, convened a design team that included representatives from some of the organizations listed there. In addition, some higher education-focused consultants and leading thinkers, including John Turin, who helped give birth to the Yale Sustainable Food Project and runs Sustainable Food Consulting, as well as Tom Kelly from the University of New Hampshire, who's recently served as the Sustainability Advisor for the National Association of College and University Food Services. And when you bring a group together with all those perspectives, the answers don't come out in 1 week. So we took our time over that year to lay out a plan and a platform that would really raise the great pillars of work, uplift it, link it together, and see what we could provide as a package to help support campuses with a central tenet of empowering students in that process of understanding their food system as it's become so distant, disconnected, and in many steps in a supply chain removed from their understanding. And so the question of what is real food began to be discussed with this group. And we realized that there were issues for the consumer around health and access, around awareness and connection to the taste of food. There was relationships to producers, to the earth, as well as to the communities. And what began to take shape was a realization that food as a central organizing principle to engage students in campus communities could directly connect to a host of issues embedded within it, and that the Real Food Challenge would undertake as an effort to kind of connect the dots, to use this Real Food Wheel as an educational tool, and to use our goal that David will talk on shortly as a access point to leverage change across the food system in higher education.
Great. Thanks so much, Tim. So as Tim is highlighting, we really have a double bottom line here at the Real Food Challenge. On the one hand is this ethic of really connecting the dots and doing what we call movement building, essentially, bringing young people together, providing the tools for us to increase our own power, not only on our campus to make change, but on the national scene as well. And like the title of this webinar suggests, there's another piece of that vision that we have, and that's really about using food and institutions as a huge economic driver to revitalize the food system. And in some ways, this strategy isn't new. I mean, if you look back a few decades to the student divestment movement of the 70s and 80s, the investment potential and the capital of a university was used to radically change the system of apartheid in South Africa. And more recently, with the Energy Action Coalition getting clean energy policies on college campuses, again, university resources have really jump-started clean energy technology and investments around the country. So we're taking this model and putting it in a very ambitious way to the realm of food systems, breaking down the silos that have existed previously and really setting a benchmark out there for students and their institutions to head for. Now, how do we do this? it's a big goal, and like the National Good Food Network, it requires a multi-pronged strategy. So to start with, we really got to get the great information out there. So if you go to our website, we've got a comprehensive student gardening guide for folks who are starting agriculture education programs on their campuses. You'll find activist strategy charts, long documents on how to get local food to institutions. It's all there. We're trying to get the best of the best knowledge right into people's hands so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so we're always looking for students and other allies. If they have that knowledge that they want to get out there, we're the people to get it in students' hands. But that's often not enough. I mean, what it really takes to inspire this type of movement is connection. So in addition to the resources, we're bringing folks together. We've had 10 real food summits in different regions of the country in the past 2.5 years alone, bring together hundreds of young people to discuss, to share the work that they're already doing on campuses and take the next step together. And of course, we have boot camps for folks who are just getting started. They can learn from A to Z how food systems work, how student organizing works, and get the resources they need to really launch into this. And now this is all meant to really nourish what are happening and blossoming all across the country, which are these school campaigns led by students to to increase the procurement of real food on their campuses, to open up student gardens, to build food cooperatives on college campuses that can increase that access, revitalize the local food economy, and support fair trade products and all the rest. We're doing that on a local level. We've had success at a statewide level, and now we're starting to engage on a national level with the food service companies that run sometimes anywhere from 100 to 500 or more campus accounts. These are the same folks who are in your hospitals and your public schools as well. And of course, we've mentioned it once before, but our Real Food Calculator is one of our premier tools for tracking and really defining what real food is on an ongoing basis. Now, throughout it all, as you can imagine, student empowerment is a piece of it. So if you look at our organizational structure, you'd see that undergraduate students, full-time students, are in leadership positions all the way up to the national level, as well as they serve as field organizers on a regional basis to support and reach out to other emerging leaders. And that's a critical component of this being a peer-to-peer effort in many ways. Now, where are we now is a great question. You know, we really launched in 2008, in the fall of 2008. And we've come quite a ways in that short period of time. What we're really looking for is to hit a certain tipping point when a trend that has been brewing in universities across the country for some years now translates that trend into real change. So right now we can boast of having over 3,500 students on 300-plus campuses around the country. And many of those schools have made concrete commitments to real food. At Sarah Lawrence College in New York, the students got it written into their school contract with their food service provider that 40% of their food would be local, that 20% of it would be sustainable in just 5 years. So ambitious goals, pushing the envelope. The same was done at Western Washington University, where they up their goal to 20% real food by 2020, and they're now writing that into a new food service contract as they work with a new provider. So all that adds up to about 32 million so far. Now our goal is $1 billion, so as you can guess, we've got a ways to go, but we believe we'll get there, and we've started to make that progress already. Now 17 schools are piloting our calculator system, which really means modeling a new standard, not only for transparency. They've opened up their books to student researchers to really investigate where their meal plan dollars are going. But they're also setting a new standard for definitions. What is real food? Now, you saw our wheel before, but the fact is, before the Real Food Challenge came along, there was no standard. You know, some schools would talk about local this, other schools would talk about fair trade that. So not only is this about painting a real food picture for the students we work with, it's about assisting the universities and being able to develop a common language that all folks can use. And I said there's other creative projects in the works. Just to touch on a few of those, we are working with the National Good Food Network to set up a fellowship for students, undergraduate students and recent graduates, to work with the fabulous organizations, local and regional organizations that the network works with, and also engage our real food student base. We're working with a group that is setting up student food cooperatives, so independent student-run food operations on college campuses. That initiative is called CoFed, which is fabulous. And also starting to look at the labor side of things, reaching out to various unions and student labor organizations. How can we set up metrics in our calculator around fair labor practices as well as support on-campus workers? And I'll hand it back to Tim now to talk a little bit more about our real food calculator as one of the tools that has been real helpful in this work.
Thank you, David. So you illustrated the kind of tipping point potential as we tap into 340 plus campuses, over 3,500 student leaders, and setting up a system to really engage the next generation of civic leaders with an understanding of striving towards real food. And I know that some questions coming in are really wondering, what is local? What is sustainable? What is real food? And hopefully this will help shape a little bit more of what we're thinking of in terms of real food, what I share here. And I think it's good to point that of those campuses, we've initially worked with 17 2- and 4-year public and private institutions across the country from all regions from the South, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, Midwest, Northwest, and West and Southwest to understand how we could actually see students work very clearly in a collaborative process with their food service staff and administrators in understanding and tackling where their real food current sourcing stands. So with the Real Food Calculator, the idea emerged that we would need not just a pillar of platforms to uplift all of the specific focus areas of sustainable food, but an actual set of metrics, a multivariate tool that would allow food service staff and students to plug in numbers across the set of Excel spreadsheets that often mirrors their food sourcing software tracking from Food Pro and on, and look at where it stands across 4 areas. The first being community-based or local, looking at the opportunities for regional and local businesses and production systems to reinvest in their local economies. We are looking at the issue of fair in the food system, ecologically sound and humane. And the approach to it was to establish a system that would be functional and usable. And we established a green, red, yellow stoplight system to designate food. And within that, we have our green categories that we'll see here in a minute, and our yellow categories, which is Real Food B. And what we wanted to do is recognize that food sourcing is not a single certification process in dining services and in retail environments. In fact, you see products with multiple certifications across those 4 dimensions. And that's something that we should award and acknowledge and push forward. So with Real Food A, we're talking about food products and items that meet more than one dimension of our 4 categorical areas. And whereas Real Food B is meeting dimensions more in our yellow zone, which we'll see as soon as this slide proceeds here. Let's see if it's going to move. There we go. So as you can see on the top blue area, we have the 4 categorical areas, and then we have our Real Food A, our green light category. We're recognizing the distinctions of third-party certifications and initiatives and definitions that are pushing the envelope on the scale of institutional food sourcing in a direction of real food. We also realize that you really can't always be at the top. And to look at a budget itself, I think we should look at what we're asking for is not 100% of campus and higher education budgets towards real food, but a margin of 20%. So the vision isn't to eclipse the market by 2020, but to ensure that there is an augmentation of a real vision of real food moving into that dominant market in higher education. So in the yellow category, we're looking at certifications across those areas that are moving in the right direction, but maybe there's some areas that could be pushed further, but we want to recognize that as Real Food B. And then in the kind of red light zone, we have kind of 3 subcategories, recognizing that there are some elements that are a good start, but really not enough to capture real food. And the way this was derived was talking with lead researchers and consultants and stakeholders in each of those 4 categorical areas that gave feedback over a 2-year process. And then through the last pilot phase, getting a sense of the kinks of how it works and isn't working so that it's becoming more functional as we move forward. We also recognize there are health concerns with physicians for social responsibility and different MDs weighing in on ingredients in products that we wouldn't want to necessarily categorize as real food if those ingredients were in products that were being counted. So as this was just flipped back to the last screen, and I'll do that for a moment just to inspire you with what we're not going to be sending participants in the mail for a free product sampling, and that is a meat push popsicle microwavable stick. And the framing and marketing today is really powerful in that students are being, framed as, on the go, in a hurry, need to grab and go, get that food in you, get out, use that energy, write those papers, go play your sports, and move on through the 3 or 4-year program or 2-year program. But I think that marketing has started really early. And so we have an enormous responsibility and challenge in itself to help pave the road for a different vision of food. And fortunately, in food services and in dining environments, it's not always fast food. Food is prepared, all you care to eat, or a la carte, with different menu items that could really meet the needs of students, be, pushing the envelope of fast food and bringing it towards real food for them to enjoy. So if we were to weigh this incredible macaroni and cheese beef chili sauce stick in the real food calculator, it unfortunately wouldn't hit any of the 4 criteria in A or B. It would definitely be in the red zone. However, if we looked at a 5-pound box of organic sugar, and we know that for California or practically anywhere in the U.S., we're not growing sugar locally, so we wouldn't be looking in the local criteria necessarily for any secondary certification. We know that just an organic certified sugar isn't really claiming any fair issues, and it's not related to humane. So we know it's met one criteria. However, if it was organic and fair trade, I think that would raise, the opportunity up to the green or real food A. So in certain campuses across the country with United Students for Fair Trade, there's a push for fair trade universities. And we're seeing college campuses feature fair trade sugars and supplemental teas and chocolates to align with fair trade that's far trade and not more domestic issues. And so a 5-pound bag would definitely be qualified in real food A if it met more than one criteria. And so there's an opportunity to kind of tease through, but you could imagine if you're going through a product inventory of 10,000 products, that would be really daunting. And so I think the process, as you can see with some of the guiding steps on the Real Food Challenge site, and as the students and campuses work with the regional field organizers, it's a lot more streamlined and effective in how to quantify and identify your top 25 products across different categories and to look at where it weighs in real food to determine your current percentage. So
Great.
Recognizing time, I don't want to spend too much into the calculator beyond that, but I think it's going to provide a unique lens to start setting some common standards. And what we want to look to in the future with this, and what we're currently in development, in addition to what David mentioned, is creating a real food award system to really incentivize and award the campuses and the student organizations that have collaborated with dining administrators to push real food forward on their campus. Now that we have an established system of metrics that is being measured, that we are tracking, we have a lot of great work to go ahead, and we need to take time to appreciate and give gratitude for those that are leading the way. And I'll pass it over to David just to introduce our first presenter on the panel.
Great. Yeah, so I mean, it's wonderful to provide a bit of an overview, but like we said before, the bulk of this work goes on the ground on university campuses, connecting with their surrounding communities and regions as they get to work. And our first panelist, Kate Turcotte, is a prime example of that. At the University of Vermont, she studied ecological agriculture and food systems. She got started through a student farm, but as she'll tell you, that work quickly progressed through other initiatives that collaborated with her dining services, which is run by Sodexo, through the Campus Kitchens project and setting up a slow food chapter. And now she continues to work with UVM, although she just graduated, to coordinate programs around sustainable food systems and agriculture. And I'll also mention she is a fabulous cheesemaker and works up at Shelburne Farms. So she'll really dig into now the work that she's done that's, I think, very emblematic of some of the fabulous work that's going on literally on dozens, if not hundreds, of campuses around the country, as well as give you a window into how working with some of the Real Food Challenge tools and networks have enriched that work. So take it away, Kate.
All right, so hi everyone. See if I can get the first slide to go. And so basically what I hope to do is just provide one example, I guess. One of the great things I think about the Real Food Challenge is that it is a network. You get to hear a lot of different stories, and the Real Food campaign looks really different on every single campus. And so for us, I think at the University of Vermont, it kind of came about to help support a lot of our other programs. Specifically, our student farm, we're really lucky that, to be in Vermont, that this is just kind of a typical day for us, is to just talk about food and farming constantly. And so at UVM, we have a 3-acre organic vegetable farm, but in the 16 years when I started, it had been going for 16 years, they'd never sold any food to dining services. And so that was kind of when I started working on the farm, was one of my missions, was to even get a couple of leafy greens in there. And so we approached dining services with a proposal, and we were actually pretty surprised at how easy it was. We thought we were going to have to kick and scream and be the good student activists that we are, but they were really open to it. And so in 2008 we sold 5 CSA shares, and that's the model that we use. We usually have 50 to 60 CSA share members, and so that worked for them. And it was such a great learning opportunity for all the student farmers. We just didn't understand the scale. We thought that we could supply all their greens for the whole entire summer, and the first day that we dropped off our greens, they were gone within I think it was like 30 or 40 minutes. And so, when a campus is serving 10,000 meals a day, it was just a really eye-opener as to just the amount of food that they go through. So, as farmers, it was good to know our markets, and we really enjoyed that. And then also for us, it was a good, we were able to get a lot of exposure, being in the dining halls, and then also being at all the first-year student orientations. And so while it was a challenging collaboration sometimes, they think of food as plate costs, as what kind of box are you going to bring the lettuce in, and we kind of thought of it a little bit differently being students, but it was a really great learning opportunity. And then another group that I was working with at the time was the Campus Kitchens Project, and they're also a sustainability-centered group where they take unused food from the dining halls and turn it into meals that is served at the food shelf. And that was great because students were actually cooking with the food that is being served to them in the dining halls. And what kind of came out of that was that a lot of students became interested in university food system change. I mean, when you get a can of pureed pork the size of your head and you're supposed to make a meal for 300 people, that's when you really learn again about food service and how it's very different than just cooking for 2 or 3 people. And so from there was a lot of students that were getting interested in, and then I guess I also want to back up and say it was a really good opportunity to meet the people that are cooking their food. They were working alongside of them. They were helping us make these meals for these people. And so they started to gain that relationship, and it was a really respectful partnership as well. And so with these 2 groups that I was working with, dining services approached me and asked whether I would be if I'd intern with them to kind of help with the progression of trying to integrate these 2 student groups in, which can be difficult sometimes. It's like all students have good intentions, but then we also have very busy lives. And so part of my internship, along with getting these 2 organizations integrated into the everyday lives of dining services, was to crunch the numbers. And this is, on the left is the first time I think I tried to kind of calculate how much organic food, real food. At the time I didn't even really know. I would just sit at my desk with a stack of invoices and just try to find food that to me I think felt like it was local or real. At the time they were really interested in Vermont products. I wasn't quite sure how I felt about that, and I really was just so lost, and after hours and hours of very tedious work, I ended up with just these numbers that just kind of sat there, and I think anyone who has done research, it's good to have your numbers be able to be articulated in a way where you can actually create change. And so that's the first time where I really reached out to the Real Food Challenge. They were in their initial stages of launching the Real Food Calculator, and for me that was so key to be able to just know that I was going in the right directions with the standards, that I was kind of setting up for calculating real food at the University of Vermont, knowing that other people are doing it this way. And then also they really just, it goes from this to being able to just visually see something, and there's with the calculator there's lots of different tools, and this speaks more to students and I think to dining services managers, than just a spreadsheet with numbers. And so this is just, one example of one of the dining halls. And so that's what I did is I broke up the calculator by each month by each dining hall, because we have 9 different dining halls, and essentially it's like having 9 different restaurants on campus. They have different managers and different systems and different tastes. So that was what I did with that. And like I said, it was a really valuable tool. It kind of, I really liked how it didn't, anyone working with food-related issues, a lot of times we try to simplify it, and I think the Real Food Calculator embraces that there is complexity in this issue, but they make it incredibly manageable. And it really helped us to create a strategy at UVM to be able to see what direction we want to go in, because now we have numbers that actually say something. So that was really great. And so from there, a lot of students, again, really wanted to get involved. So I decided to make kind of like a committee working group of students to move forward with these issues. And, like every student group, I'm sure you've all been a part of it, we're super ambitious at the beginning. We're going to take over the world. And then about like mid-October, all of a sudden you have tons of homework, and maybe this working group that you're a part of isn't as fun as you thought it was going to be. But we did, we created a really great website. We finished the work that we set out to do, but it was a really great learning experience for me to kind of think about the value of students in this kind of work. And that's when I started to reach out to the Real Food Challenge with support on how to find the strengths of students. That was when we started to go to the summits and the leadership trainings, and I found that, although we can do this kind of work where we're sitting down and making strategies and 10-year, 5-year plans, really what students are good at is, is action and being passionate and all of that stuff. So this was just one of the many demonstrations and educational things that we do at UVM, and I think that also the Real Food Challenge is a really great place to direct student energy. A lot of times they would get directed to me, being the intern of Sodexo, and it was a lot. I think it was a lot more beneficial to send them to the Real Food Challenge as a resource, because they have so many, whether it's their trainings or their website, they have a lot of different ideas, and it really kind of kept the energy going. So that was another really great way for us to use the Real Food Challenge, and it still lives on today. I actually just got an email from our Slow Food chapter here at UVM, and they're updating their petition, the Real Food petition, and other. What else are they doing? They're doing a lot, so it's pretty exciting. So it continues to live on, and so I guess also thinking about students, one of the big things is that student energy turns over, and so that's another great value in the Real Food Challenge, is that they keep student energy alive. A lot of times there'll be a few students that people look up to hold all the knowledge, and the thing is that students move off campus, they graduate, and so that's what the Real Food Challenge is really great for. It's really great that every single year they'll have these leadership trainings, and so the rising first years and sophomores can go and learn these necessary skills. And I guess specifically at the UVM, one of the things that we did was we created a week's worth of events having to do with food, and this year we're coming up on our 3rd year, and so every year all these events, it's a collaboration, I think, of 30 different student groups and off-campus organizations, and that's just another way to kind of keep the energy going, and when a lot of times this stuff can come and go with semester. That worked for us. And then another thing that's been happening at UVM is that there has been a lot of work by administration to move forward our food systems agenda, either with professors or graduate students. And so what we did recently was to create a seminar for students to be a subcommittee of this larger committee. And my time is running out, but I have a list of resources here, so if you want to check out a little bit more about the UVM Food Systems Research Spire, And I have to say, I'm excited because David is going to be one of our speakers. Last week we had Fred Kirschman of the Leopold Center as one of our guest speakers, but David is going to be able to come in and kind of give the real food story and continue that energy with our class. So I'm really excited, and that's my day.
Well, thanks so much, Kate, for sharing that story and those perspectives. And now I'm going to hand it over to Tim to introduce Bonnie, who's going to, I think, share a very complimentary story of sort of what it looks like from the other side of the table, as it was.
Thank you, David. Bonnie Krause is the Assistant Director of Residential Dining Services at the University of California at Santa Barbara with a degree in food and nutrition. She's been a member of the university's dining management team for over 32 years and currently is the Director of Dining Services Business Office. And her primary responsibilities include a broad set of initiatives involving equipment and construction, financial management, food procurement, production systems, dining service technology and software systems, quality control, as well as wellness and sustainability policies and implementation. Her scope includes 4 residential dining commons serving 4,700 students, concessions for athletic events, special events, catering, and summer conferences, feeding 2.2 million meals annually with a capital budget of $16 million and a food budget of $5.5 million. She's currently the dining liaison to the UCSB Purchasing and University of California Office of the President for all procurement issues. In addition to all of that busy work on her campus and in additional sustainability work in her community on food issues for the campus, she's involved in the Premier Association for College Food Service Operations, known as NACUFS, and serves as the Pacific Region's president for the National Association of College and University Food Services. And I won't take any more time, Bonnie, to introduce you, but just appreciate your presence and what you have to share from your campus to your associations and how you see the world of food systems changing in higher education.
Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon. Thank you to our hosts. I am pleased to be able to join you from Santa Barbara, California. In my presentation, I will be reviewing an overview of UCSB dining services, how we have connected with students on the Real Food Challenge, successes we have had at UCSB with sustainability initiatives. Before I get started, I want to mention there's a lot of information, so you're probably not able to capture it all, but the presentation will be available to you on the website. So we'll keep it moving. UCSB, with an enrollment of 20,000 students, is located on the Central West Coast. We are self-operated with a $5 million raw food budget and serve over 10,000 meals a day. Oops, going backwards. Sustainability is not a trend, it is here to stay. And the focus on sustainability issues on our campus and college campuses throughout the state and nation demonstrate that. The Chancellor's Sustainability Committee meets frequently, and student groups such as the Environmental Affairs Board are working on various campaigns, including the Real Food Challenge, Meatless Mondays, and promoting climate-friendly menus. The students were very instrumental in campaigning for increasing local and organic foods, as well as for what is called trayless dining. Many campuses across the nation have converted to a trayless dining format. Getting rid of serving trays equates to students taking less food and wasting less food, results in savings in food costs, chemicals, and water to wash those trays. Turning to a statewide initiative, just last year the University of California established a food policy for all 10 UC campuses and medical centers with a goal of serving 20% sustainable food by the year 2020. UCSB and other UC campuses have already exceeded this goal. Nationwide, the National Association of College and University Food Services is the premier higher education association and has developed a sustainability guide and sustainability goals within their strategic plan this past year. So a large segment of educational sessions at NACUFS regional and national conferences are focused on these issues. Dining services focused on many initiatives in 2009-10, which truly catapulted our department forward in many areas, and I'm trying to summarize them here. Number one, vision and strategic plan. Yes, we established a long-term vision and a strategic plan. It sounds simple, but it was critical to obtain buy-in from all levels of our dining operations. You can contact me to learn more about this process. Number two, as all UC campuses are doing, we're focusing on accomplishing the sustainable food policy. And as I mentioned, we have exceeded that this year. We have continued to outreach to the Santa Barbara County by meeting with community leaders in agriculture, meeting with farmers, K through 12 administrators, health and wellness advocates, and various environmental groups partnering in the food business. And number four, implementing Trayless last year resulted in tremendous reduction in food waste. Number five initiative was an acceleration of purchases of local and organic produce, rising from 6 to 26% of our total produce purchases. The sixth area of focus, composting all food waste, pre- and post-consumer, resulted in an incredible 90% reduction in garbage going to the landfill. Number seven, a campus grant, the Green Initiative Fund, funded the hiring of a student coordinator who worked with dining services on a variety of initiatives, including number eight, the hiring of student interns to work with dining services on Real Food Challenge projects. The student food coordinator position will be covered in the next few slides. Megan Carney started as a student liaison to dining services and was chosen as a UC Agri-Food Fellow and then hired as a half-time coordinator. Her responsibilities revolved around assessing dining services real food. TGIF. This TGIF project included hiring 13 undergraduate student interns who worked in teams of 3 areas of focus: education, research, and marketing. Interns were hired for full academic year, received course credit, and collaborated with other student groups on events and tabling in the dining commons. Another project revolved around assessing the amount of real food served in the dining commons, and this study was based on the Real Food Calculator. 1 week of actual invoices were compared year over year, and the total real food served went from 16% in 2009 to 21% in 2010. Here you see interns conducting various educational tours and activities. These food for thought activities for student residents also included tours of the dining commons. Besides developing a newsletter and website, educational materials were developed for special events in the dining commons, including Sustainability Week, Nutrition Week, and Earth Day. A pilot program with the Santa Barbara County Farmers Market Association blossomed into partnership with Farmer Direct Produce. Our local produce purchase have increased dramatically, including 7 farms located within 15 miles of campus. This slide shows our dramatic increase from 6% sustainable and organic produce to 26% in just 1 year. Considered UCSB's direct line to local farmers, a distribution hub has been established with 17 small farms within 15 miles of campus. This map shows an area as far south as Ventura and extending north to San Luis Obispo and Bakersfield. UCSB's current primary produce supplier, the Berryman, also delivers product from many local farms. They use over 25 farms, organic and conventional, located within 150 miles of campus. We are proud of and passionate about our local farmers and provide profiles to educate our student residents. They are a primary reason UCSB has reached their real food goals so quickly. One of our dining commons. This graph shows the decrease in waste that we calculated after the dining commons went trayless. 54% less waste per person was measured from the dishes after consumption, 37% less waste overall. A partnership with a local waste management company resulted in addition of compactors to dispose of all food waste, pre- and post-consumer. And I'm sorry, I skipped a slide. I'm going to go back. The best part of being trayless was that money was saved, and it could be spent on additional sustainable food, which resulted in exceeding our goals. So new programs added this past year, including increasing sustainable fish, fair trade organic coffee, cage-free humane certified eggs, and sustainable produce, and an extra benefit was the savings in water use. This partnership with the local waste management company resulted in addition of compactors to dispose of all our food waste, pre- and post-consumer, and this resulted in the diversion of the 90% from the landfill. By winter of 2011, all 4 dining commons will be diverting 90% of their waste from the landfill. So thank you for your time. I hope I've given you an overview. There's plenty of materials available from all of us that work here in UCSB on these sustainable issues. Please feel free to contact me or any of our other resources here at UCSB. We'd be happy to answer questions.
Bonnie, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate your perspective today, and I'm just going to pass it over to David to introduce our last panelist.
Absolutely. Next up is Sue, and I guess just before that, I learned so much from you, Bonnie. That I think what just becomes really clear to me is the multiple impacts we can have when we focus on institutions like colleges and universities, both on the educational side, on the operations and systems side, and really affecting the whole region, as you showed there through some of your maps. So thanks again for your presentation and your work. So next up is Sue DeBleek, our last but certainly not least presenter. I've had the privilege to work with Sue for a number of years. She hails from Ames, Iowa, and she's worked for a great number of years with the Farm to ISU program at ISU, which she helped launch, and later after graduating out in rural Maine at the Down East Farm to School project there. And now out at Vegelution in California, which is a youth farm. That's really great. And she'll be heading back to Iowa to do some great work with the Iowa Farmers Union. So Sue's got a breadth of experience, and not only that, she'll share with you, she helped pioneer the Real Food Challenge Network in the Midwest. So there's a lot of incredible learning that happened there that is unique from some of the lessons we've taken away from our experiences in other regions throughout the country. So I won't say too much more, but Sue, please take it away.
Thank you so much, David. It's really great to be here today, and I'm happy to be involved in the call, even though I'm no longer involved with the Real Food Challenge. So I'm going to be speaking today about working after the Real Food Challenge, and also what working for the Real Food Challenge helped me to be. So as David said, I was at Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa. There I was part of the graduate program in sustainable agriculture, where I was studying local and sustainable food systems as a master's student. And luckily, within that program, there's an emphasis on community projects. So I was encouraged by other students and by my professors to get involved with local projects. And so one thing I got to do was help to initiate a new local foods program at Iowa State University. So Farm to ISU began in 2007 with outreach to farmers and support to the dining services. Support to the dining services came a little bit later, but it was just as important as doing outreach to farmers. So in 2 years, Farm to ISU, within starting Farm to ISU, we raised the amount of local foods being purchased from 1.5% to 12%. So the change was huge, and it was it was quite easy to start to get local food from producers because we were in the middle of Iowa, which is wonderful agricultural land. And then it also meant that I got to help the dining services kind of work with their menus to include more of these local foods, and that helped them to increase their percentage even more. And I think today they have about 15% local food. While I was studying in the graduate program in sustainable agriculture, I also got to become involved with the Real Food Challenge. So I was the first organizer in the Midwest. I got to work at creating a network from a network of one, which was me, and trying to build it up to as many people as possible. I got to look around the region to see who was already doing these types of projects and what sort of campuses already had real food initiatives. And what I found that youth were already doing great work and they needed to be highlighted, and the people that weren't yet doing this work needed to be supported so that they could do more. Because I got to work with the Real Food, because I got to work with the Real Food Challenge in the Midwest and build that network, I got to host the first Midwest Summit, which 100 students came together for one weekend of student-led workshops. And it was a huge opportunity for the youth that were there. They had never been to a conference that was all about student work on campus. And it was really inspiring for them to see other youth and to build relationships directly with students that were on campuses like theirs, that were on campuses where they felt overwhelmed by the fact that big agriculture was the only way that you could study agriculture at your school, and students that were overwhelmed by the fact that their schools were surrounded by monoculture, by fields of corn. And they were really inspired when they came to the Real Food Summit, because then they felt connected to other change makers in the same region dealing with the same issues. So some of the skills that I gleaned, I've pared it down to 3, but there are so many more that I've gained from working with the Real Food Challenge. So I'm just going to touch on 3. The first one is organization. I got to learn how to plan events and support students on campaigns. These events meant that I had to find engaging topics, great speakers, and fit them all into a tight schedule, and usually a pretty, and usually a space that wasn't exactly what we needed, but was close enough. I also got to support student campaigns for school gardens and for more local food on campus, which meant helping the students set a clear goal and clear strategies for what they were working on, and also along the way always provide them with enthusiasm and tactics that have been proven to work. The second skill that I have gained was community engagement. The first piece that I got to work on within the Real Food Challenge was reaching out to students, and often that meant reaching out to professors and trying to have them recommend which students are the ones that are making change on their campus. It also meant that I got to learn how to talk to dining staff, which was much harder than any other language I've tried to learn. When I was talking about local food, I would talk about carrots that were grown within 20 miles. When they were talking about local food, they were talking about Coca-Cola because it was bottled 40 miles away. So I had to learn how to learned how to talk to them about local food, and one of the biggest things that I learned was how to find out what they were interested in local agriculture. I found that many of the staff actually grew up in agricultural areas, and their families may have been involved in agriculture, and so local food did mean a lot to them, and having a garden meant a lot to them, and so I needed to figure out how to talk to them about that and how to bring out those interests that they already had within them. So I learned also how to try to not add on more to their workload. These dining staff were a bit too busy already, and so they saw working on a local food campaign as being just another thing added to their workload. So what I tried to do was to make it easier for them and also to support them in the work that they were doing so that we could increase the amount of local food purchased. So the next thing that I'm going to jump to is another skill that I have gleaned, and this is presentation skills. I got to work on leading workshops. Not only the workshops that I led for students were on how to plan their campaigns, how to facilitate good meetings, and how to engage the dining services in a positive way. I also got to take part in some hard discussions with dining staff about what they could do to get more real food on campus, and also talking to students about food issues, and also peppering that in with some social justice and oppression discussions. Now, all of these things have brought me into the real world, into the field. And I think that my work with the Real Food Challenge has made my work outside of the Real Food Challenge that much more powerful. The Real Food Challenge connected me to other schools doing similar work. So when I was working on the Farm to College project, the Farm to ISU project at Iowa State University, it changed my life when I got to meet other youth that were working on similar projects, when I found out that there were people my age with the same job at Stanford University and at the University of Montana. So I got to share resources with them through the Real Food Network and also collect more information from them about what was working in their areas. So when I was no longer working for the Real Food Challenge, I still used those links and skills when I was working on the Farm to School campaign in Down East Maine. I put on teacher workshops on gardening, which inspired 5 new school gardens in places where they had just a grassy lawn. I also helped cooks and farmers talk to one another, which meant that I created 15 contracts between farmers and cooks for 6-week intervals of local food. Currently, like David said, I'm at Veggielution Community Farm in San Jose, California. Because of the national connections that I've gotten through the Real Food Challenge and because of the passion that I have for engaging youth, I've come to San Jose to be working with high schoolers who are working on the community farm here and to help them with their plans for community engagement and to create a proposal with them to address healthy school food. Soon I'll be returning back to Iowa, which I'm really excited about. There I'm going to continue to use my real food skills and my national connections. I'm going to be working for the Iowa Farmers Union to do more community education around food issues and also continue to learn from national partners. So now I get the opportunity to invite you all of you young professionals out there that are doing food work to join our new Real Food Alumni Network. It's really important. When I first found myself at a small nonprofit on the coast of Maine, I felt pretty isolated from the network. I was no longer on a college campus where I knew of other youth that were doing food work, and I needed to connect to other youth that were trained in the real food model and so that I could continue to grow and learn. So now we have this Real Food Alumni Network that engages young food professionals across the nation so that we can continue to build on each other's work and create meaningful relationships with the people that we're going to be doing this food work with over our lifetimes. So if you can, please go to realfoodchallenge.org and join the Real Food Alumni Network because we want to build this network beyond people who already know about the Real Food Challenge and also continue to inspire even more young people who are going to read the newsletter and meet each other, which is the best part. So all in all, the Real Food Challenge has had a huge impact on my life as a young person within the food movement. I feel that my work has been amplified by the skills that I've been given and by the people I know. I better understand my role and what others are doing around the country, and I feel supported and deeply inspired by what all these people are doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. This really terrific presentations. I want to open the floor for questions. There have been a lot of questions that have come in, and I'm going to start with one actually for Sue. The question is, what were some of your methods for keeping the dining staff workload in check? Did you just make them more engaged and therefore more willing to add work, or did you find preparation methods that didn't affect their workload?
So one of the first things that I did to not try to adversely affect their workload was not starting with new menu items, but simply using local foods and menu items that they're already serving. So one example was honey. It was really easy to source local honey, and the cafes were already putting out honey for people to mix into their tea or coffee. So that was an easy fit. And then also doing things like serving local apples, which we could get a lot of in the fall. It fit the season of the school year and also could just be served whole. So trying to fit in local food items into existing menus was one of the tactics.
Great. Okay. There was a question that was answered, but brings up an interesting point. There's a question about involving the faculty to teaching. Kate and Sue, in your experience, do you think that there would be faculty interested in getting involved?
This is Sue. I can say that there hasn't been, when I was a real food organizer, I did not use the tactic of addressing professors, primarily because I wanted it to be a student-run effort. But however, I think professors have a role to play in that if they are teaching a class about real food, to let their students know about the Real Food Challenge and to become connected to the network. Kate, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I was going to say at UVM just this semester is probably the first time that we have engaged faculty, mostly because they're kind of working on this stuff themselves, at least with they're creating food systems curriculum graduate school programs, and so we just want to connect with the professors and all work on this kind of project together. And so right now I'm TAing a class where 4 food systems professors and the Dean of College of Ag is it's a seminar style class, upperclassmen and graduate students, and they're kind of working on this issue. So we're trying it out. I'll let everyone know how it goes.
And this is David. I'll say that I think we could have just as easily founded the Real Curriculum Challenge, given what's going on around the country. I think a similar situation in terms of the explosion of interest in students around this, and it's not just extracurricular, as you probably know. It's also very academic in nature. So on the one hand, we see ourselves as a lot of what we're doing, although it can be seen as activism or sort of economic development. It's also deeply educational, and so students do get credit for, in many cases, using our real food calculator system to audit their school's dining operations. They've developed student-taught courses or group-led courses that facilitate their engagement with the university and scaffold it with other academic reading. So I think there's all sorts of opportunities for education throughout this work, and I think finding the faculty who are really willing to partner with students in a real accessible and an equal way, I think is really what's needed. And there's a wonderful organization I've got a plug out there called the Sustainable Ag Education Association, and they do food systems education, linking graduate students, undergrads, professors, particularly at land-grant schools across the country, who are developing innovative ways for teaching sustainable agriculture and food systems.
To add to that, David, one of our steering committee members, Damian Parr, is one of the founders of Sustainable Ag Education Association, helped develop the first undergraduate sustainable food system major at UC Davis, or the curriculum. And I know there'll be publishing on the outcomes of the first few years of piloting it, but it was in response to a lack of focused curriculum for young people to engage in the interdisciplinary issues around that real food wheel, and how do they come to terms with understanding how to make an impact, how to affect policy when the food system is so complex. So I think you're right that there's a response, and in some senses institutions are responding. In other areas maybe they're not yet, but it's definitely an issue that's on the rise.
A question for Bonnie. Do you have any plans for direct sales from, without a middleman, direct to the farmer, or purchasing, I should say?
At this, we have looked at, hello?
Hi, go ahead.
I'm on. Okay. We've looked at this issue for several years, and buying direct from farmers was way too problematic, just in terms of transportation, the number of farms that we would have to deal with, placing orders, invoices, and really came to, it is a middleman, but we feel that it's the best that we could have, since this is a distribution company that is able to pick up from the farm and deliver within 24 hours to our campus. And it allows us to have, a price list and availability of the different farms in our area, and really be able to pick and choose. And it's developed into a very strong partnership. And I think this type of hub system works for us much better than trying to deal with 17 different farms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what we at the National Good Food Network also have found. There's a question about elementary and high school programs. So I think what I'll do now is hand the mic back over to Tim and David to do a little bit of a closeout, and then I'll let you guys know all about the upcoming events.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeff. This has been a lot of fun. And to talk about where we're headed next, just as we close out, one thing that everyone should keep a lookout for is our Real Food Summit. This year we're getting bigger and badder than ever, and we're going to be having two very large summits on the East Coast, up in Boston, on the West Coast over in Santa Cruz, with 500 plus attendees, perhaps even 600 or 700 as well, not just having college students, but also incorporating high school students who are doing incredible change work, and other young activists and leaders. So that's a great place for folks to engage and come and learn from what young people are doing in different parts of the country. And there will also be summits in the Midwest and Southwest and other regions. So that's wonderful to look at. Another thing I want to highlight when it comes around sort of the broader youth engagement is that we are working with a number of other partners who are doing more grassroots food justice work outside of the university context to blow out a incredible national alliance. Currently it's going under the name Live Real, that will engage youth of all ages and all backgrounds, with a particular focus on those young people that come from historically marginalized communities, to take a similar model to what we've done with the Real Food Challenge in building a national youth alliance that can really represent those voices and bring them to the fore in the food movement. So that's another particularly exciting initiative that we're helping to support. So we encourage everyone to take a moment this afternoon to scroll through our website, realfoodchallenge.org. There's lots of links to other interesting stuff there. If you have suggestions for us, feel free to give any of us a call or email, as well as please contact our field organizers in different parts of the country. These are young people. These are current undergraduate students who have done incredible work and are helping to support other students in their region, help plan events. So it's a great person to connect with in your region. And if you are a food service company or a nonprofit or other distributor, I'm sure there's lots of people on the line, definitely ask you to consider what was the role of young people in your work, either as leaders, as learners, or as partners. It's definitely something to consider. And then finally, we hope that you all have fun. I think that's one other thing that the Real Food Challenge has always tried to instill into our work is that, you know, this has got to be enjoyable. Food at its very heart is about pleasure. It's about nourishment. And so our activism, our work, our partnerships, all of it, you know, it's got to be fun. So that's the last little bit from there. Tim, do you have any last words to share before we close out?
Sure. Just thanking everyone for joining us today on the panel as presenters and as participants. We look forward to being in contact. As you can see, our contact information is on the webinar screen now. As David mentioned, you can log onto our site and take a look at some of the partners doing great work. We also run a calendar of events and activities that run with our partners as well as through ourselves, like our summits. There's an upcoming event in December in California for the Domestic Fair Trade Association and the Agricultural Justice Project, taking place December 6th to the 8th, that those looking at scaling up fair food in the supply chain might particularly be interested. I know there's scholarships and resources available for that. And just to quickly add on to the high school, elementary school question, yes, we are engaging in high schools. My work in elementary and middle schools in recognizing kind of the federal reimbursement and school food programs, there's several layers of complexity added on there. But what I've found is that the stakeholders, the food service directors and those staff in both aspects need to be part of a system that dignifies and recognizes their countless hours and service for providing healthy, fresh food. And I've found a lot of success in uplifting and hearing and working from them versus merely directing them. And I think we found in the Real Food Challenge the same thing, that if we can align food service directors with food service directors from other campuses that are partnering with students, those peer-to-peer conversations have an incredible impact and open up the pathways for more trust and engagement from students to staff and administrators. And I really like the suggestions around how to engage faculty. And I think outside of the classroom, really engaging the academic side of the institution to support this type of relationship is a really exciting thing that we can hopefully promote further in the future. So thanks again, and appreciate the opportunity, Jeff and Marty, for having us here today.
Well, I want to thank you, Tim and David, and our Real Food Challenge folks, and the case study panel, Kate, Bonnie, and Sue. If you want to contact any of these folks, their email is on the presentation slides, which we will archive on ngfn.org/webinars, along with the recording of the presentation. So don't worry if you weren't able to jot it down quickly. NGFN webinars are each third Thursday of the month at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The next webinar features Karen Karp of Karp Resources in New York City, recently named New Yorker of the Week. Karen is a food systems consultant extraordinaire. She'll take you through the Karp Resources strategy of looking at the resources that already exist and figuring out how to use them to scale up good food. She'll use a few examples of the projects they've worked on to illustrate this highly efficient strategy. And on December 16th, we're going to look at the financial side, a new interesting model that's been created to quantify some of the financial resources that are not necessarily erstwhile quantifiable. To register for either of these webinars, ngfn.org/webinars. We have a growing archive of all these NGFN webinars. We've been doing them for well over a year. There's recordings, slides, all the written questions and answers that you've seen pass by today. We'll post within a few business days. So take some professional development time and watch a few more recordings. Many of you know that the NGFN publishes a monthly e-newsletter where we collect some of the more notable stories in the scaled-up good food world. If you'd like to contribute a story idea or even a story, let us know. Contact at ngfn.org. And you can view this month's and all previous months' e-newsletters at ngfn.org/networknews. The The NGFN is a convener, and as such I want to alert you to an upcoming event. The It Takes a Region Northeast Regional Food Systems Convening is in Albany, New York, November 12th and 13th. The Northeast Sustainable Agriculture Working Group, or NESOG, convenes this meeting of practitioners and advocates in the Northeast to explore the concept and reality of regional food systems, what they are, why and how to build them. The event in Albany also includes pre-conference trainings on November 11th. One of the pre-conference tracks that might be particularly interesting to the NGFN crowd is called The Dignity Deal, Creating Profitable Wholesale Distribution Networks for Mid-Sized Farmers, with two of the leaders of Red Tomato. NESOG is a regional lead team of the National Good Food Network, convening the full spectrum of food buyers, producers, distributors, community leaders, and more. Go to ittakesaregion.org. You can find the NGFN on YouTube, on Twitter, and on our website, ngfn.org. I'd like to encourage you to add your name, interests, your bio, and other information to our growing database of people, organizations, and funders, increasing your ability to connect to people within your regions and nationally. This is all part of the NGFN acting as connector. Look for the database link in the resources section of our site, or ngfn.org/database. And if you haven't already, sign up for our email updates. There's a link on the ngfn.org homepage. Please contact us at any time. Again, contact@ngfn.org. And the NGFN would like to thank you for your time today. Once again, let me encourage you to fill out the survey that will open in your web browser in just a moment. And again, thank you to our presenters.